The war had lasted 3 long years. 3 years of blood, fire, and death across 100 different worlds. The Empire had been losing. Their enemies, they were stronger, faster, and more brutal than anything the galaxy had ever seen. They were a proud people, tall and elegant with skin that shimmered like pale silver. But pride did not win wars. Strength did, and they were not strong enough. Then the humans came. No one had expected much from them. Humans were new to the galactic stage. Their planet was small. Their technology was decades behind everyone else. Their bodies were soft, their lives were short, and they had no special abilities. They had accepted human help only because they were desperate. They expected the humans to die quickly and accomplish nothing. They were wrong. Ho stood in the great hall of the palace, still wearing his battle armor. It was scratched and burned in a dozen places. There was dried blood on his hands that was not his own. His face was tired, but his eyes were sharp and clear. He was 32 years old, average height for a human, with short black hair and a scar that ran across his left cheek. He looked ordinary. He looked like nothing special at all. But he had just ended the war. The Emperor of the sat on his crystal throne, looking down at the human soldier. Emperor was ancient by any standard. His silver skin had faded to a dull gray, and his eyes were clouded with age. But his mind was still sharp, and right now, that mind was trying to understand how this simple creature had done what his greatest generals could not. There was burning, their fleet was destroyed, their leaders were dead. And this human, this ordinary human, had been the one to make it happen, not alone, of course. He had led a small team of human soldiers into the heart of enemy territory. They had done what everyone said was impossible. They had won. Ho, the Emperor said, his voice echoing through the great hall. You have saved our empire. You have saved billions of lives. The debt we owe you cannot be measured in gold or land or titles. Ho said nothing. He just stood there waiting. He was good at waiting. Ask for anything, the Emperor continued. Anything within my power to give, and it shall be yours. A planet of your own, a fleet of ships, riches beyond imagination. Name your reward, human. The court watched in silence. There were hundreds of nobles gathered in the great hall, all of them staring at the human with a mix of curiosity and disgust. Most of them still did not believe that this creature had truly won the war. Surely there was some trick. Surely the humans had cheated somehow. Creatures so weak could not be true heroes. Ho looked at the Emperor for a long moment. Then he spoke. His voice was calm and steady. I want a wife. Whispers exploded through the court. A wife. The human wanted a wife. Of all the things he could ask for, he wanted a person. The Emperor raised one thin hand and the whispers died. A wife, he repeated. An interesting choice. Very well, I shall give you my daughter. More whispers. The Emperor had 7 daughters. Each one was a princess of the empire. Each one was beautiful, powerful, and valuable beyond measure. Marrying one of them would make the human part of the royal family. It would give him status, protection, and influence that would last for generations. Bring my daughters, the Emperor commanded. The great doors at the end of the hall opened, and 7 women walked in. They moved in a line, oldest to youngest, each one more impressive than the last. The first princess was tall and fierce, a warrior who had led armies. The second was a genius, known across the galaxy for her scientific discoveries. The third was a diplomat who had negotiated peace treaties between warring civilizations. The fourth was an artist whose works hung in museums on 1,000 worlds. The fifth was a priestess, connected to the ancient spirits of the people. The sixth was a strategist, said to be able to predict the future through pure logic. And then there was the seventh. Princess Lyra walked at the end of the line. She was small, much smaller than her sisters. While they stood tall and proud, she kept her head down. While their skin shimmered bright silver, hers was dull and pale. While they radiated power and confidence, she seemed to shrink into herself as if she was trying to disappear. The court barely looked at her. They never did. Lyra was the youngest, the weakest, and the most worthless of the Emperor's children. She had no special talents. She was not beautiful by standards. She was often sick, her body too frail to handle the demands of royal life. Many in the court wondered why the Emperor had not simply sent her away. A princess who could do nothing was a shame to the family. The 7 princesses stood before Ho. The oldest sister looked at him with cold eyes. She was clearly annoyed that she might be given to this human like a prize. The second sister studied him with scientific curiosity. The third smiled politely, already thinking of how to use this situation to her advantage. The fourth looked bored. The fifth seemed lost in meditation. The sixth was calculating something in her head. Only Lyra looked at him differently. She looked at him with soft eyes, not with greed or ambition or annoyance, just with simple, quiet kindness. She looked at him like he was a person, not a problem to be solved. Ho noticed. "Choose," the Emperor said. "Any of my daughters can be yours." The court held its breath. Everyone knew what the smart choice was. The first princess would give him military power. The second would give him technology. The third would give him political connections. Any of the first 6 would be a prize worth more than planets. Ho walked down the line slowly. He stopped in front of each princess, looking at them carefully. The first sister glared at him. He moved on. The second sister met his eyes with cold intelligence. He moved on. The third smiled at him, but the smile did not reach her eyes. He moved on. The fourth barely noticed him. The fifth did not open her eyes. The sixth was still calculating. Then he reached Lyra. She looked up at him, surprised that he had stopped. No one ever stopped for her. No one ever noticed her at all. She expected him to move past her, to go back and choose one of her powerful sisters. That was what made sense. That was what everyone would do. Ho said. The word echoed through the silent hall. Her, the Emperor repeated, confusion in his ancient voice. You choose Lyra. Yes. The court exploded. Nobles shouted in disbelief. Some laughed out loud. Others shook their heads in disgust. The human was a fool. He had been offered the greatest treasures of the empire, and he had chosen the one thing that was worthless. Lyra's sisters stared at Ho with a mix of shock and relief. They had escaped. They would not be married off to this strange creature, but they also could not understand his choice. Why would anyone choose Lyra? Lyra herself looked like she might faint. Her pale face had gone even paler. Her hands were shaking. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Are you certain? The Emperor asked. His voice was careful now. He was studying the human with new interest. My youngest daughter is not like her sisters. She has no power, no skills, no value to offer you. She is weak and often ill. She will bring you nothing but trouble. I am certain, Ho said. May I ask why? Ho looked at Lyra. She was trembling, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. She did not understand what was happening. She did not understand why this human, this war hero, had chosen her when he could have had anyone. Because she was the only one who looked at me like I was a person, Ho said simply. The others looked at me like I was a tool or a threat or a puzzle, but she looked at me with kindness. In my experience, that is the rarest gift of all. The court fell silent. The nobles did not know what to say. The Emperor stroked his chin thoughtfully. The older princesses exchanged glances, suddenly uncomfortable. Very well, the Emperor said finally. She is yours. Princess Lyra shall be your wife. Lyra made a small sound, something between a gasp and a cry. Her sisters looked at her with pity. The poor girl had been given to a human. Her life was ruined. But Ho walked to her and offered his hand, not grabbing her, not demanding anything, just offering. I know this is not what you expected, he said quietly, so only she could hear. I know you are scared, but I promise you I will never hurt you. I will never force you to do anything. You will be safe with me. I give you my word. Lyra looked at his hand. Then she looked at his face. His eyes were tired but gentle. There was no hunger in them, no greed, no cruelty, just patience and something that might have been understanding. Slowly, hesitantly, she reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were cold and thin, like fragile glass. Ho closed his hand around hers gently, carefully, as if he was holding something precious. The court watched in stunned silence as the war hero and the worthless princess walked out of the great hall together. No one understood what had just happened. No one could explain why the human had made such a foolish choice. But deep in her heart, for the first time in her life, Princess Lyra felt something she had never felt before. She felt hope. The palace had given them a small house on the edge of the royal grounds. It was beautiful by most standards, with crystal walls and gardens filled with flowers that glowed in the dark. But compared to where the other princesses lived, it was nothing. It was a clear message from the court. Lyra was worthless, and her human husband was a fool. They deserved a home that matched their status. Ho did not seem to mind. He walked through the house on their first day, looking at everything with quiet interest. The furniture was elegant. The rooms were spacious. The view from the windows showed the great city of the stretching out to the horizon. "It's nice," he said simply. Lyra stood in the corner of the main room, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She had not spoken a word since the ceremony that morning. The wedding had been quick and simple, attended by none of her family except for a few servants. Her sisters had not come. Her father had not come. She had stood alone before the priest, her new human husband at her side, and she had felt nothing but shame. Now they were here, alone, married. She did not know what to expect. In the stories she had read, human men were violent and demanding. They took what they wanted without asking. They treated their wives like property. She was waiting for Ho to show his true nature, to reveal the monster hiding behind his gentle words. But he just kept looking around the house like a visitor at a museum. "Are you hungry?" he asked, turning to look at her. Lyra shook her head quickly. She was not hungry, she was terrified. Ho studied her for a moment. Then he nodded and sat down on one of the elegant chairs. He looked strange sitting there, this battle-worn human in his simple clothes, surrounded by the delicate beauty of design. He looked like he did not belong, but he also looked like he did not care about belonging. "You do not have to be afraid of me," he said quietly. Lyra said nothing. "I know what you have heard about humans," Ho continued. "I know what your people think of us. We are violent. We are primitive. We take what we want without thinking about others." He paused. "Some of that is true. Humans can be cruel. We have done terrible things to each other throughout our history." He looked at her with those tired, gentle eyes. "But not all of us are like that, and I am not like that. I meant what I said in the throne room. I will never hurt you. I will never force you to do anything. You are my wife in name, but you do not owe me anything. You can have your own room, your own life, your own freedom. I ask only that you give me a chance to prove myself." Lyra stared at him. She could feel something strange coming from him, something she had felt from the moment he first looked at her in the throne room. It was not like the feelings she felt from others. When her sisters looked at her, she felt their disgust and disappointment. When the nobles looked at her, she felt their contempt. When her father looked at her, she felt his shame. But when Ho looked at her, she felt warmth, sincerity, truth. She had always been able to feel things like this. It was her secret, the one thing she had never told anyone. Ever since she was a child, she could sense what others truly felt. Not their words, not their faces, but their real emotions. The anger hiding behind a smile. The fear hiding behind courage. The lies hiding behind pretty words. She had never told anyone because no one would believe her. She was the weak princess, the worthless one. Why would she have any special gift? And even if they believed her, they would just find another reason to look down on her. They would call her a freak, a mistake, something even more broken than they already thought. So she had stayed silent. She had watched and listened and felt, and she had kept it all inside. But now, feeling the warmth coming from this human, she began to wonder if she had made a mistake. "Why did you really choose me?" she asked. Her voice was soft and rough from not speaking all day. Ho smiled slightly. I told you you were kind. That cannot be the only reason. No one chooses a wife because she was kind. You could have had power, wealth, influence. You could have had my sister who leads armies or my sister who discovers new technologies. Why would you give all that up for kindness? Ho was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was thoughtful. When I was young, my mother was very sick. She could not work. She could not take care of herself. My father left us because he did not want to deal with a sick wife and a young son, so it was just me and her alone with nothing. Lyra listened, surprised. She had not expected him to share something so personal. The people in our village looked at my mother the way your people look at you, like she was worthless, like she was a burden. They did not help us. They did not care. Some of them even laughed at us, said we deserved our suffering because we were weak. His eyes grew distant, lost in memory. But my mother never became bitter. Even when she was in pain, even when we had no food, even when everyone looked down on us, she was still kind. She still smiled. She still found ways to help others who were suffering, even though she had nothing to give. She taught me that kindness is not weakness. It is the greatest strength there is. He looked at Lyra again. She died when I was 16. I joined the military because I had nothing else. I fought in wars because that was what I was good at. I killed enemies and completed missions and became a hero, but I never forgot what she taught me. And when I stood in that throne room looking at your sisters, all I could feel was their hunger, their ambition, their cold calculation. They looked at me and saw what they could gain. He shook his head slowly. But you looked at me and saw a person, a tired, broken person who had just finished fighting a terrible war. You felt sorry for me. You felt compassion. I could see it in your eyes. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. He had noticed that. He had seen what she was feeling, even though she had tried so hard to hide it. That is why I chose you, Ho said. Not because I expected you to give me anything, but because kindness like that is rare. And after everything I have seen, everything I have done, I think I need kindness more than power. Tears were forming in Lyra's eyes. She tried to stop them, but they came anyway, rolling down her pale cheeks like drops of crystal. You are strange, she whispered. Ho laughed softly. Yes, humans are strange. You will have to get used to it. For the first time since the ceremony, Lyra felt the tightness in her chest begin to loosen. She was still scared. She was still confused. But she was also beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, this human was not her enemy. I have a secret, she said suddenly. Ho waited, patient as always. I can feel things, emotions. When people are near me, I can sense what they truly feel, even if they try to hide it. I have always been able to do this. I do not know why. She expected him to laugh at her. She expected him to think she was lying or crazy. That was what everyone else would think. But Ho just nodded slowly, like she had confirmed something he already suspected. I thought so, he said. What? In the throne room when I walked past your sisters, you flinched. Not at me, at them. You flinched when you felt their emotions. And when I stopped in front of you, your face changed. You relaxed, just a little. Like you felt something from me that was different from what you felt from them. Lyra stared at him in shock. No one had ever noticed her reactions before. No one had ever paid enough attention. Humans are not as blind as your people think, Ho said with a small smile. We learn to read people because we have to. Our lives depend on understanding those around us, and I have spent many years reading people in the worst situations. I noticed you, princess. I saw what others did not see. My gift is weak, Lyra said quickly. I cannot read minds. I cannot control people. I can only feel emotions, and sometimes I cannot even understand what they mean. It is not useful. It is not powerful. Is that what they told you, that your gift is weak? Lyra nodded. My family does not even know I have it. I never told them because I knew they would find a way to make me feel worse about myself. They would say it was a useless ability, just like everything else about me. Ho stood up and walked toward her slowly. He stopped a few feet away, giving her space, not crowding her. "Let me tell you something," he said. "In war, information is everything. Knowing what your enemy truly feels, knowing if they are lying or telling the truth, knowing if they are afraid or confident, that knowledge is worth more than armies. Your gift is not weak. It is one of the most powerful abilities I have ever heard of." Lyra shook her head. "But I cannot control it. I cannot use it to help anyone." "Not yet," Ho said. "But that is because no one has ever helped you develop it. No one has ever believed in you enough to try." He held out his hand, just like he had in the throne room. "I believe in you, Princess. I think you are far more than anyone realizes, and if you will let me, I would like to help you discover what you can truly do." Lyra looked at his hand. Then she looked at his face. She reached out with her gift, feeling his emotions as clearly as she had ever felt anything. There was no deception, no manipulation, no hidden agenda. Just warmth, hope, and something that felt almost like faith. She reached out and took his hand. "Call me Lyra," she said softly. "Not Princess, just Lyra." Ho smiled, and for the first time in her life, Lyra felt like she might actually matter. "All right, Lyra, let us see what we can accomplish together." Outside their small house, the palace gleamed in the starlight. Inside those crystal walls, nobles were laughing at the foolish human and his worthless bride. They were sure that both of them would fade into obscurity, forgotten and irrelevant. They had no idea how wrong they were. 3 months passed. Slowly, Lyra began to change. It started with small things. She began eating more, gaining strength that she had never had before. She began speaking more, her voice growing stronger each day. She began walking with her head up instead of down, looking at the world instead of hiding from it. Ho never pushed her. He never demanded anything. He simply treated her with respect and patience, day after day, until she began to believe that she deserved it. He asked about her interests, her thoughts, her dreams. He listened when she spoke and remembered what she said. He made her feel like her words mattered. And he helped her practice her gift. Every evening, they would sit together in the garden of their small house. Ho would tell her about the different emotions he was feeling, and she would try to identify them. At first, she could only sense the strongest feelings. But as the weeks passed, she became more sensitive. She could detect subtle shifts in mood. She could tell the difference between real happiness and false happiness. She could feel lies forming in someone's heart before they even spoke. "You are getting better," Ho said one evening, as the glowing flowers around them pulsed with soft light. Lyra smiled. She had been smiling more often lately. "I had a good teacher." "You had yourself. I just gave you permission to try." That was how he always was. He never took credit for her growth. He never made her feel like she owed him anything. He simply stood beside her and helped her find her own strength. The court had not changed its opinion of them. When they were required to attend royal functions, the nobles still whispered and laughed. They called Ho the fool human and Lyra the burden he had chosen. They made jokes about how the great war hero had wasted his reward on the worthless princess. But something was different now. When Lyra heard their words, she did not crumble. She did not run away and cry. She stood tall beside her husband and let their mockery wash over her like water over stone. Because she knew something they did not know. She could feel their emotions, and beneath all their laughter and contempt, she could sense their fear. They were afraid of Ho. They were afraid of what he represented. He had done what none of them could do. He had saved their empire when their greatest generals had failed. And deep down, they knew that if he ever turned against them, they would have no way to stop him. So they mocked him instead. It was easier than admitting they were scared. Lyra never told Ho about this. She did not want to make him angry or upset, but she kept the knowledge close to her heart, and it made her stronger. Then the attacks began. The first one came on a quiet evening. Ho was walking through the palace gardens, heading to a meeting with some military advisors. Lyra was with him, as she often was now. She liked being near him. His emotions were warm and steady, a constant source of comfort in a world that had always been cold. She felt the assassin before she saw him. It was like a spike of ice in her mind. Cold, sharp, focused. The intent to kill was so strong that it made her gasp out loud. She grabbed Ho's arm and pulled him to the side just as a blade cut through the air where his head had been a moment before. Ho reacted instantly. His military training took over. He spun, grabbed the attacker's arm, and twisted. There was a sharp crack and the assassin screamed in pain. Within seconds, Ho had the man pinned to the ground, helpless. Guards came running. They took the assassin away. Ho checked on Lyra, making sure she was not hurt, before he even looked at the wound on his own arm where the blade had grazed him. "How did you know?" he asked quietly, as the guards led the assassin into the palace. Lyra was shaking. "I felt him, his intention. It was like a cold knife in my mind. I knew he wanted to kill you." Ho looked at her for a long moment, then he nodded slowly. "You saved my life." Lyra did not know what to say. She had never saved anyone before. She had never done anything that mattered. But tonight, she had felt danger coming and she had acted. And Ho was alive because of her. The second attack came a week later. This time there were 3 assassins. They came in the night, creeping through the shadows of the small house. Lyra felt them approaching while Ho was sleeping. She woke him with a touch, and he moved silently, positioning himself near the door. When the assassins entered, they expected to find their targets asleep and helpless. Instead, they found a human soldier who had killed thousands of enemies in a war that had nearly destroyed the galaxy. The fight lasted less than a minute. Afterward, Ho sat on the edge of his bed, cleaning the blood from his hands. Lyra sat across from him, still trembling from the waves of violent emotion she had felt during the battle. "Someone wants me dead," Ho said calmly. "Someone powerful enough to send trained killers into the royal grounds." "Who?" Lyra asked. "I do not know, but I intend to find out." The third attack was different. It was not assassins in the night. It was poison in Ho's food during a royal banquet. Lyra felt the servant's guilt as he placed the dish in front of her husband. The man was terrified, his emotions screaming with fear and shame. He did not want to do this. Someone was forcing him. Lyra knocked the plate from the table before Ho could take a single bite. The court stared at her in shock. The emperor himself raised an eyebrow at the disruption. "Forgive me," Lyra said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I felt something wrong with the food. I believe it has been poisoned." The room fell silent. Guards quickly seized the servant, who broke down crying and confessed everything. He had been threatened. His family had been taken hostage. He had been ordered to poison the human, or his children would die. The nobles stared at Lyra with new eyes. She had known. Somehow she had known. Whispers began to spread through the court. The worthless princess had saved her husband's life. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. How was that possible? What was she hiding? Ho noticed the whispers. He noticed the new way people looked at Lyra. Some were curious, some were suspicious, some were afraid. "They are starting to wonder about you," he said that night, as they sat together in their small house. "I know," Lyra replied. "I can feel it, their confusion, their suspicion." "Are you afraid?" Lyra thought about the question. A few months ago, the answer would have been yes. She would have been terrified of being discovered. She would have hidden deeper into the shadows, trying to disappear completely. But now, "No," she said, "I am not afraid. Let them wonder. Let them see that I am not what they thought I was." Ho smiled. "Good, but we need to be careful. Whoever is trying to kill me is still out there. And now they know you are protecting me. That makes you a target too." "I do not care," Lyra said firmly. "I will not let them hurt you. You are the first person who has ever believed in me. I will not lose you." Ho reached out and took her hand. His grip was warm and strong. "We will face this together," he said. "Whatever comes, we will face it together." The attacks continued over the following weeks. Each time, Lyra sensed the danger before it arrived. Each time, Ho dealt with the threat. They became a team, working together in perfect harmony. He was the sword, and she was the eyes that saw in the dark. The court watched and whispered. Some began to think that maybe the human had not been such a fool after all. Maybe he had seen something in the worthless princess that everyone else had missed. Maybe there was more to Lyra than met the eye. But others grew more determined. If 3 attacks had failed, then they would send 30. If poison had not worked, they would try something else. The human and his bride had to die. Too much was at stake. In the shadows of the palace, enemies were gathering. Plans were being made. And soon, the truth would come to light in a way that no one expected. Lyra stood at the window of her small house, looking out at the glittering palace in the distance. She could feel the tension building in the air. She could sense the hatred and fear that surrounded her and Ho like a dark cloud. But she was not afraid. For the first time in her life, she knew who she was. She was not worthless. She was not weak. She was a princess with a gift that could change everything. And with Ho at her side, she was ready to show the galaxy what she could truly do. The emperor called a meeting of his highest council. All the most powerful nobles in the empire gathered in the great chamber beneath the throne room. They came to discuss the assassination attempts on the human war hero and what should be done about them. Ho was required to attend, and where Ho went, Lyra went with him. The council chamber was a circular room with walls made of dark crystal. 30 of the most influential people in the empire sat around a long table. At the head sat Emperor, looking tired and old. To his right sat his oldest daughter, Princess Vex, the warrior. To his left sat Lord, the head of the noble houses, a tall man with cold eyes and a permanent frown. Ho and Lyra were given seats at the far end of the table, as far from the emperor as possible. Another insult, another reminder of their low status. Lyra did not care about the insult. She was focused on something else entirely. The moment she entered the room, she felt it. A dark presence. Someone in this chamber was hiding terrible secrets. Someone was wrapped in layers of deception so thick that they almost blocked her gift entirely. Whoever this person was, they were dangerous. More dangerous than anyone she had ever felt before. She reached under the table and squeezed Ho's hand. He glanced at her, saw the tension in her face, and gave a small nod. He understood. Something was wrong. The meeting began. Lord spoke first, his voice smooth and confident. "Your Majesty, these attacks on the human are concerning, but we must not overreact. He is just one man. Perhaps it would be wise to send him away from the capital for his own safety. He could live on one of the outer worlds, far from those who wish him harm." Several nobles nodded in agreement. Sending Ho away would solve the problem without risking any of their own resources. But Emperor shook his head slowly. "Ho saved our empire. Sending him away would be a disgrace. It would show weakness. Our enemies would think we cannot protect even those who serve us best." "Then we must find who is behind these attacks," Princess Vex said. Her voice was sharp and angry. She had never liked Ho, but she liked weakness even less. "Someone in this court is responsible. We must discover who and punish them severely." "And how do you propose we do that?" Lord asked. "Do you have evidence? Do you have witnesses? Or are you simply going to accuse nobles without proof?" The room fell into tense silence. Everyone looked at everyone else with suspicion. The problem was clear. Someone powerful was trying to kill Ho, but without evidence, nothing could be done. Lyra listened to the arguments, but she was not paying attention to the words. She was reaching out with her gift, carefully probing each person in the room. Most of the nobles felt the same things: greed, pride, self-interest. They did not care about Ho or the attacks. They just wanted to protect their own power and position. But one person was different. Lord. As Lyra focused on him, she felt the layers of deception begin to crack. Beneath his calm exterior, beneath his smooth words and confident manner, she felt something terrible. Hatred. Cold, burning hatred for the Emperor and the entire royal family. And beneath that hatred there was a plan. A vast, complex plan that stretched across years of careful preparation. He was the traitor. Lord was behind everything. Not just the attacks on Ho, much more than that. He was planning to overthrow the Emperor himself. He was planning to tear down the royal family and take power for himself. The assassination attempts on Ho were just one small part of a much larger scheme. And he was going to make his move soon, very soon. Lyra's heart was pounding. She knew the truth now, but what could she do? She had no evidence. She was the worthless princess who no one believed in. If she accused Lord, the most powerful noble in the empire, everyone would laugh at her. They would say she was trying to get attention. They would say she was making things up. But she looked at Ho and she saw the trust in his eyes. He believed in her. He had always believed in her. And he had taught her that her gift was not a weakness. It was a strength. She stood up. The room went silent. Everyone stared at the small, pale princess who had risen from her seat without permission. Even the Emperor looked surprised. "What is the meaning of this?" Lord demanded. "Sit down, girl. This council is not for children to interrupt." Lyra's voice came out stronger than she had expected. "I know who is behind the attacks." Whispers exploded through the chamber. The nobles looked at each other in shock. Lord's face remained calm, but Lyra felt the spike of fear that shot through his emotions. "This is ridiculous," he said smoothly. "The girl knows nothing. She has no evidence, no witnesses, no proof of any kind. She should not be allowed to speak in this council." "Let her speak," Emperor said. His ancient eyes were fixed on Lyra with intense interest. "I wish to hear what my daughter has to say." Lord's fear grew stronger, but he hid it well. "Your Majesty, this is beneath the dignity of this council. The worthless princess has nothing to offer." "I said let her speak." The Emperor's voice was cold now, filled with authority that silenced all objection. Lyra took a deep breath. This was the moment. Everything depended on what she said next. "I have a gift," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the silent chamber. "I have always had it, but I never told anyone because I was afraid. I can sense emotions. I can feel what people truly feel even when they try to hide it. I can detect lies. I can sense hidden intentions." The nobles stared at her in disbelief. Some laughed quietly. Others shook their heads. But the Emperor leaned forward, his clouded eyes suddenly sharp. "Go on," he said. Lyra pointed at Lord. "He is the traitor. He is behind the attacks on my husband, but that is not all. He is planning to overthrow you, Your Majesty. He has been working toward this goal for years. He hates you. He hates our entire family, and he will act soon if he is not stopped." The room exploded in chaos. Nobles shouted in outrage. Lord jumped to his feet, his face twisted with fury. "This is madness," he roared. "This worthless girl is accusing me, the head of the noble houses, of treason. Based on what? Her imaginary power to read emotions. Your Majesty, this is an insult to everything I have done for this empire." "It is not imaginary," Ho said calmly. He was still seated, looking at Lord with steady eyes. "Her gift saved my life 3 times. She sensed the assassins before they struck. She felt the poisoned intent of the servant before I ate a single bite. Her ability is real, and if she says you are the traitor, then I believe her." "You are just a human," Lord spat. "Your opinion means nothing here." "Perhaps," Ho said, "but I notice you have not actually the accusation. You have called my wife worthless. You have called her gift imaginary. You have demanded that she be silenced, but you have not once said that you are innocent." Lord's face went pale. Lyra felt his fear spike sharply, cutting through his anger like a knife. The emperor raised his hand, and the room fell silent once again. "Lord," the emperor said slowly, "are you loyal to me?" It was a simple question, an easy question to answer. All Lord had to do was say yes, and he could continue to deny everything. There was no proof, no evidence, nothing but the word of a princess everyone thought was worthless. But Lyra was watching him, and in that moment she felt something strange. Lord's emotions were shifting. His fear was being replaced by something else. Pride, arrogance, a sense that his plans were already too far along to be stopped. He laughed. It was a cold, bitter laugh that echoed through the chamber. "Loyal to you," he repeated. "Loyal to a dying old fool who sits on a throne he does not deserve. Loyal to a family of weaklings who needed humans to save them from their enemies." The nobles gasped in shock. Guards around the room reached for their weapons. But Lord was not finished. "I have spent 30 years building my network. I have placed my people in every level of this government. Your military, your intelligence services, your household staff. They all answer to me. I was going to wait a few more months before making my move, but since your worthless daughter has forced my hand, I suppose we will do this now." He snapped his fingers. Half the guards in the room turned their weapons on the other half. Nobles screamed and dove for cover. The emperor rose from his throne, his ancient face filled with shock and betrayal. Lord smiled coldly. "Did you really think your little princess could stop me? Her gift told her the truth, yes, but the truth means nothing if you do not have the power to act on it." But he had made a mistake. He had forgotten about the human. Ho moved faster than anyone expected. He was across the room before the guards could react, his hand closing around Lord's throat. The traitor's eyes went wide with shock. "I spent 3 years fighting enemies much stronger than you," Ho said quietly. "I have killed thousands of people who thought they were unstoppable. You are not the first traitor I have dealt with, and you will not be the last." The guards loyal to Lord raised their weapons, but they hesitated. If they fired, they might hit their leader. And in that moment of hesitation, the guards loyal to the emperor struck. Fighting broke out across the chamber, but it was brief. The traitors' forces were outnumbered once their leader was captured. Within minutes, it was over. Lord knelt on the floor, bound and helpless. The emperor stood over him, his ancient face filled with cold fury. "Take him to the dungeons," he commanded, "and arrest everyone who served him. They will all face justice." As the traitor was dragged away, the emperor turned to look at Lyra. For a long moment he said nothing. Then slowly he walked toward her. Lyra stood straight and tall. She was trembling, but she did not look away. "My daughter," the emperor said, "I owe you an apology. All these years I thought you were weak. I thought you had nothing to offer. I was wrong." He reached out and took her hands in his. His grip was frail but warm. "Your gift is extraordinary. You saw what I could not see. You saved my life, my throne, and my empire. I am proud to call you my daughter." Tears were streaming down Lyra's face. She had waited her entire life to hear those words, and now, finally, they had come. "Thank you, Father," she whispered. The emperor smiled, and for the first time in years he looked like a true father, not just a distant ruler. He turned to Ho, who stood quietly to the side. "And you, human, you chose her when everyone else overlooked her. You helped her become what she was meant to be. Perhaps you are not such a fool after all." Ho smiled slightly. "I just recognized what was already there, Your Majesty. Lyra saved herself. I just gave her the chance." The emperor nodded slowly. "Then you are wiser than any of us, wise enough to see value where others saw nothing." He turned to face the assembled nobles, those who remained after the traitors had been taken away. "Let this be a lesson to all of you. Strength comes in many forms. Power is not always loud and visible. Sometimes the greatest power is quiet and hidden, waiting for the right moment to emerge." He looked at Lyra with pride in his ancient eyes. My daughter is no longer the worthless princess. From this day forward, she shall be known as the seer of the empire, and her voice shall carry the weight of truth in this court." The nobles knelt, one by one, before the small pale princess and her human husband. And Lyra, for the first time in her life, knew exactly who she was. 1 year had passed since Lord's betrayal and defeat. The empire had changed. With the traitors' network dismantled, old corruptions had been swept away. New leaders had risen to take the places of those who had been arrested. The emperor had grown weaker in body but stronger in spirit, knowing that his legacy would be protected by those who truly loved the empire. And Lyra had become the most important advisor in the galaxy. Her title was the Seer of the Empire, and she had earned every letter of it. Ambassadors from distant worlds came to meet with her before they met with anyone else. Military commanders consulted her before planning their campaigns. Merchants and nobles and common citizens all sought her wisdom. She could tell truth from lies with a single glance. She could sense hidden intentions before they became actions. She had prevented 3 more coup attempts, 7 assassination plots, and countless lesser schemes, all without a single drop of blood being spilled. But despite all her new power and status, Lyra had not changed. She still lived in the small house on the edge of the royal grounds, though it had been renovated and expanded. She still wore simple clothes instead of the elaborate gowns of her sisters. She still spoke softly, kindly, with warmth that made everyone around her feel valued and heard. And she was still married to Ho. Ho had changed too in his own way. He was no longer the tired soldier who had stood in the throne room 1 year ago. He had found peace. He had found purpose. He spent his days training the next generation of warriors, teaching them the skills that had saved the empire. He spent his evenings with Lyra, walking in their garden, talking about anything and everything. They had become partners in every sense of the word, not just husband and wife, but best friends who understood each other completely. Lyra could feel his emotions as clearly as her own, and he could read her thoughts just by looking at her face. They moved together like 2 parts of one whole. Tonight they sat in their garden as the glowing flowers pulsed around them. The stars were bright overhead and the distant palace shimmered like a dream. It was a perfect evening, warm and peaceful. Lyra looked at her husband. After a year of marriage, she still found herself marveling at him. This strange human who had seen her worth when no one else could. This quiet warrior who had given her the strength to become who she was meant to be. She had asked him once, long ago, why he had chosen her. He had told her about his mother, about kindness, about seeing her look at him with genuine compassion. She had believed him then, and she still believed him now. But there was still a question that lingered in her heart, a small doubt that she had never quite been able to shake. "Ho," she said softly. He turned to look at her, his eyes warm in the starlight. "Yes. I want to ask you something, something I have wondered about for a long time." "You can ask me anything." Lyra took a deep breath. "When you chose me in the throne room, you said it was because I was kind, because I looked at you with compassion, and I believe that was true, but I have always wondered if there was something more." She hesitated, trying to find the right words. "I know that you are intelligent, more intelligent than anyone gives you credit for. You saw things in that throne room that no one else saw. You noticed details that everyone else missed. So I wonder sometimes if you also saw my gift, if you sensed, somehow, that I had abilities that others did not know about. If part of the reason you chose me was because you saw my potential value." She looked down at her hands, suddenly nervous. "I would not be angry if that was true. You had every right to look for value in a reward. I just want to know, was it only kindness, or was there something more strategic in your choice?" Ho was quiet for a long moment. Lyra felt his emotions shifting, settling into something calm and honest. He was going to tell her the truth, whatever it was. "I noticed things about you in the throne room," he said finally. I noticed the way you flinched when your sisters walked past. I noticed the way you relaxed when I approached. I wondered if you could sense things that others could not. But that was not why I chose you." He reached out and took her hand in his. "Lyra, when I stood in that throne room, I was the most valuable person in the galaxy. I had just saved an empire. I could have asked for anything. Ships, planets, armies, wealth beyond imagination. Your father would have given me whatever I wanted." His grip tightened slightly. "And I was so tired. You cannot imagine how tired I was. 3 years of war had taken everything from me. I had killed so many people that I had lost count. I had watched friends die beside me. I had done terrible things for a cause I believed in, and I had paid the price in pieces of my soul." Lyra felt the pain beneath his words. Old pain, deep pain, carried quietly all this time. "When I looked at your sisters, I saw what they wanted from me. They saw a tool, a weapon they could use to gain power, a stepping stone to greater ambitions. They looked at me like I was a prize to be won, not a person to be understood." He shook his head slowly. "I did not want that. I did not want to be used anymore. I had spent 3 years being used as a weapon by governments and generals and emperors. I was so tired of being valuable because of what I could do instead of who I was." His eyes met hers, and in them she saw more honesty than she had ever seen from anyone. "And then I looked at you, and I saw something that I had not seen in years. I saw someone who looked at me with genuine concern, not for what I could give her, not for what I represented, but for me as a person. You felt sorry for me. You saw a tired, broken man, and your heart reached out to him." He smiled softly. "That was the kindness I was talking about, not politeness, not courtesy, real kindness, the kind that comes from a good heart, the kind that my mother had even when she had nothing else." Lyra felt tears forming in her eyes. "I did not choose you because I saw your potential," Ho continued. "I did not choose you because I thought you might be useful. I chose you because you were the only person in that room who looked at me like I mattered. And after everything I had been through, that was worth more to me than all the power in the galaxy." The tears spilled down Lyra's cheeks. She had hoped this was the answer, but hearing it spoken out loud, feeling the truth of it in his emotions, was overwhelming. "But what about my gift?" she asked. "If you had not suspected it, would you still have chosen me?" "Yes," Ho said without hesitation. "Lyra, I did not know what your gift could become. I did not know that you would save my life 3 times, expose a traitor, and become the most trusted advisor in the Empire. I suspected you had something special, yes, but I did not choose you because of it." He squeezed her hand gently. "I chose you because you were kind. Everything else came after. Your gift, your growth, your power. All of that happened because you finally had someone who believed in you. But it was always inside you, waiting to emerge. I did not create it. I just gave you the space to find it yourself." Lyra was crying freely now, but they were happy tears. For the first time, she understood completely. Ho had not calculated her value. He had not made a strategic choice. He had simply seen a kind heart in a room full of ambitious ones, and he had chosen kindness. "You are the strangest person I have ever met," she whispered. Ho laughed. It was a warm, genuine sound that she had grown to love over the past year. "I am human," he said. "We are all strange. We care about things that do not make logical sense. We value kindness over power, love over ambition, connection over status. Your people think this makes us weak, but I think it makes us strong." Lyra reached up and touched his face. His skin was rough, marked by years of war and hardship, but to her it was the most beautiful face in the galaxy. "Thank you," she said, "for choosing me, for believing in me, for everything." Ho leaned forward and kissed her forehead gently. "Thank you for being someone worth believing in." They sat together in the garden as the stars wheeled overhead. Two people from different worlds, different species, different backgrounds, but somehow they had found each other, and together They had become something greater than either of them could have been alone. The Empire was safe, the future was bright, and in a small house on the edge of the royal grounds, the strangest couple in the galaxy was simply happy. Years later, when historians wrote about this era, they would focus on the great battles and political intrigues. They would write about the war that nearly destroyed the Empire and the human soldiers who saved it. They would write about Lord's betrayal and the seer who exposed him. But they would also write about the human soldier who chose the weakest princess as his reward. And they would wonder, as people always do, why he made such a strange choice. The answer was simple, really, simpler than anyone expected. In a universe full of power and ambition and greed, one tired soldier had chosen kindness, and that choice had changed everything. It was the most human thing in the galaxy. And perhaps that was why it mattered so much.